Hey, Tony Jones here for thehardestquestion.org. I am responding to Russell Rathbun's posts on the hardest question this week. It's Ordinary 21 is the name of the Sunday in the Revised Common Lectionary, and we're in mid-August of 2010 when we're tackling this passage in the lectionary, although you may be preaching on this passage some other time. I'm most interested in Russell's response to the passage from Luke 13:10 through 17, Jesus' healing of a crippled woman who'd been bent over, crippled for 18 years. I love Russell's midrashic reflexes, and I've learned a lot from him in that sense. Russell sees the midrashic element of sermon preparation to always be asking another question, a harder question, and asking the question of the text, not trying to ask what did the author mean, or what did Jesus mean, or something like that, but what is the text saying? What is the text doing here? And Russell's hardest question this week is what's being repressed in this story. So he goes on to elucidate that and say, what does it mean that this woman, this daughter of Abraham, is bent over? What does the crowd understand Jesus to be doing when he raises her up straight? I think I want to ask a different hardest question, actually. I think there's actually a harder question in this passage than that. But I do want to respond briefly to Russell's question here, because I think it's an important part of understanding all the healing miracles, particularly those in the Gospel of Luke, and particularly those that happen to women in the Gospel of Luke. Because here what Jesus is doing is reaching out to someone who was marginalized by the religious society of the day. So she's a woman to begin with, so she's a second-class citizen in Jerusalem as it is already. And then the fact that she's crippled and has been for 18 years, which is one of these interesting details that Luke sees fit to give us, that she had been crippled for 18 years, common knowledge, obviously, that she's doubly marginalized. So she's a woman and she's crippled, so she's unclean, she's an untouchable, and she's the very one that Jesus reaches out to touch. And I think this is a good question that Russell asks. What does it mean that she's bent over metaphorically in the gospel? And then what does it mean when she's stood up straight by Jesus? But what's interesting to me about this passage, a little bit different from what Russell focuses on, is that the leader of the synagogue who witnesses this is not indignant that Jesus healed a woman or healed a cripple, but that Jesus healed on the Sabbath. And he says to the crowd, look, there are 6 days that Jesus could heal this woman, but here he comes and does it on the one day that he's not allowed to do it. And Jesus' response is really intriguing to me. You hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And then goes on to say, should not this woman, this daughter of Abraham, be set free from her bondage on the Sabbath day? Jesus, here's the hardest question, I think. Why the hell does Jesus compare this woman, this daughter of Abraham, to a pack animal? I mean, that's the analogy that Jesus is using. Look, you unloose, you free your donkey on the Sabbath to go out and, wander around freely and, eat grass and do whatever. Why shouldn't I let this daughter of Abraham free from what is holding her down, what is bonding her on this day? That's troubling to me, that Jesus draws a parallel between a woman who's crippled and has been for 18 years and a donkey. I mean, a beast of burden. There's so many other ways I think that Jesus could have responded to this and said, I'm Lord of the Sabbath, and the Sabbath rules don't apply to me. You don't understand the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. But he doesn't say any of those things. He doesn't give any kind of big, overarching theological, turn the Sabbath upside down kind of statement. Instead, he says, well, you do things on the Sabbath. Well, why shouldn't I be able to do things on the Sabbath? What do you make of that as a preacher? That to me is the hardest question in this week's texts. Thanks for watching.